Hi, this is Laura Forehand from the Desert Sanctuary podcast. As we have authentic discussions about deconstruction and religious trauma, please be aware that some episodes may contain stories of sexual abuse and or suicide. Please take care of your mental health. We love you. Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Carl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be where you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our series on the addiction of religion or religious addiction with Bob Miner, who is a professor at the University of Kansas, but also the founder of the Fairness Project. So here's part 2. It's just going to pick up where the conversation left off with part 1. If you haven't listened to part 1, you might want to go back and do that. Have a great day. Now, someone encouraged us at one point to take a year off, and we were already kind of in the process and considering not going to church. I wasn't a pastor anymore and been several years and got triggered by things in church, and it was about that time. But she encouraged us to take a year off, and I wonder what you think about that for people who, I mean, sometimes they've had a lot of this brainwashing and been repetitively told they need to be there, they have to be there. But how would you kind of phrase that advice to someone, or would you?
I think you're right. I think taking time off from all of the activities and from all of the just trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because just trying to figure out why someone's an addict is a waste of time. I mean, it's great, it's wonderful, it's so on. We can do it, but it's sort of like, I got to understand this. I've got to understand this. No, this is not about logic. This is not a logical thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is about emotions, psychological needs, and so on. So I think that's the reason why people need to step away. I heard a minister, by the way, say, sometimes your best spiritual journey is to get out of this church. And take the time. And that's the time we need. We don't want to be alone. That's a good time. People need to be try to find a community of people who understand this. And that's hard. I mean, that's the whole idea behind support groups, or a counselor that understands this. And that's hard too, to find one. Someone who is what Alice Miller, when she wrote a whole bunch of books on that name, she died about 10 years ago. She was came out of Germany, and she was a therapist, but she was an expert on child abuse.
Mm.
And she said children who are being abused need an enlightened witness. That's what she called it.
Mm.
In other words, someone in their life who says, what you're going through is not your fault.
Mm.
It is caused by other things. And it's sort of like going into a supermarket and seeing a frustrated parent hitting their child because the child's acting like a child in an adult's world.
Mm.
They didn't want to come to the supermarket. And the parent is frustrated because all they wanted to do was read the label to see if these ingredients were going to kill my child, and so on. And just someone going up or seeing the child where they look at him and smiling at him. In other words, some message that this isn't caused by you. And what's the 3 C's of Al-Anon? You didn't cause it. You can't control it, and you can't cure it. Now that's for other people looking at the addict.
Mm-hmm.
But the need at that point, if someone can find an enlightened witness. Now, I believe, I don't know, maybe When Religious Addiction has a book, but I believe your work is an enlightened witness.
Mm.
Now, I'm not trying to blow smoke, I'm just saying, I think that's, you're there. It is there. If it can be there when someone needs it. You never know when that is.
Yeah.
You never know when it is that they're going to be, let's say, hit bottom. That's what they would say in it, and and so that kind of enlightenment needs to be added to, I think, the time off.
Mm.
And it can't be time off to argue against that. It can't be that. I mean, that's
Right.
not it. It's got to be time off for you to understand, why am I here? How did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this hard?
Yeah.
That type of thing.
We experienced, I think they used a slightly different word, but I had the privilege to spend some time with some Benedictine sisters in Atchison, Kansas. They are at Mount St. Scholastica, I think is what it's called. But I was trained to be a spiritual director, which is not a director in any way. It's also not really a therapist or anything like that. Doesn't give out advice, but they would sit with you as you explored your body. I'm getting in a totally different topic right now, but they almost never told me anything that sounded like advice. But they would listen to me as I interacted with the parts and called them parts of me that was wounded, that was acting like a child or whatever. And when they would be there with it, it was more like they were feeling with me. They were going through this with me, but they weren't, oddly enough, trying to direct me. They were, some people call it an empathetic witness, or all kinds of different, but just that someone that can sit with you and be with you. And hopefully they have a little bit of wisdom, a little bit more experience that they can share. But that's deep, like you're talking about before, that's deep internal work and it's hard. And it's much easier if, especially someone skilled at it, can make us bypass that and experience a different high and, so that we'll come back. That was a ramble, wasn't it?
No, that was good. I was caught up in it. I thought that I just lived down the road from the Benedictines. I live in Kansas City, Kansas right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're up there. And, that's okay. I'm going to make a judgment here. That's why it's probably good you were talking to nuns, not priests.
Mm-hmm.
Because in our culture, women have been taught to listen. Men have been taught to fix women.
Yeah.
Always have a fix for it. Well, here are the 4 things you can do, and that's not what you needed. You needed to be heard and witnessed. You needed to be, and we all need this. I have a support group, a men's support group I've been going to since the early 90s. We meet once a week, and it's just listening to each other. No one gives advice unless asked. No one comments on other people's stuff unless asked. And we share the time with what's going on in our lives. And it has to be something emotionally. Why did I respond this way? Why did I do this? And that's a contradiction to what men in our culture are taught about having to have all the answers. I mean, look at the concept of leadership we're stuck with. And it's people who have to appear to have all the answers, appear to never have made mistakes. It goes on and on and on and on and like that. And what people it's like when I'm doing a workshop and some parent will ask me, what is your advice to parents about bringing up children without this gender conforming stuff? And I don't mean transgender. I mean, no matter what their orientation is.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a little booklet. I don't know if I ever sent you the booklets I wrote. One of them was called help a parent.
Mm.
And the most important thing I can say to them, and they just, all of a sudden, they're willing to listen, is stop being the perfect parent. And then I said, if you have been the perfect parent, of course, now there's kind of chuckling, plan in a mistake every so often. Because children do not need to see perfection. They need to see how to fix mistakes.
Mm.
And they need to know that a mistake is doing something. If you knew then what you knew now, you wouldn't have done it. And instead of what we all learned as children, well, not all of us, but many of us learned as children. Oh, my grandsons hadn't learned this, or my son, but which is, oh, what's wrong with you? How many times have I told you this? And now you're, and it becomes a thing, a shaming thing, rather than it's a mistake. And if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done that. And how many of us, I mean, this is one of the things I think people need to ask about their religion when they're asking, is it addiction? Is your religion a welcome journey? Is your religion a journey through life, or is it a tour? And in a tour, everything is planned out for you. It's today, it's Monday, and at 8 o'clock, the bus leaves, and da 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 da. In a journey, that's full of surprises. You walk down the path in the woods, you turn the corner. Could be a beautiful waterfall, could be a bear. And so one of the things that helps us see we're recovering is we look back and say, I've changed my mind. I didn't know 20 years ago I would be here. That's a journey. And to me, life is supposed to be a journey, not a tour. Does that make sense? That distinction I made.
Yeah.
And I think
Clearly.
non-addictive religion would be a journey, not a tour. And that's the problem. How do you get it to be a journey, not a tour? Are there surprises? Am I upset about even maybe what I used to say? Yeah. Well, yep. It also is not controlling. Addictive religion is controlling. And addicts need to control. I have this quotation right here from Abraham Tversky, who wrote a book called Addictive Thinking. One of the features of addictive thinking is the addict's perception of always being right. Many of the other traits prevalent in addictive thinking, denial, projection, rationalization, omnipotence, are brought into play to bolster the insistence that the person has always been right. And no wonder the 10th step of AA is, and when wrong, promptly admit it. And so, yes, we're on a journey. I know from your writing, your life has been a journey with all kinds of unpredictable surprises to get to the place that's healthier now than you feel you were then. And that's all of us. And that's non-addictive thinking. And can I be open about my journey?
Yeah, sure.
Addictive religion is always and has always been right. Tradition, orthodoxy. We have now discovered the truth after 1,000 different Protestant denominations searching the Bible. We have discovered the truth. And this is the way it has always been. Instead of seeing that this is all part of culture too. I mean, if you can't live in ambiguity and be addicted to religion. And I've learned to live in ambiguity. There are things I don't know. And that's okay, because I tend to not live my life on the basis of what I don't know.
Yeah. It's good.
Do you think there's life after death? I don't know.
I know. Yeah.
But I'm not living my life now. I'm not trying to live a loving life and a good life because of what happens next. I'm living this now. And so it's hard for people to live in ambiguity. We want all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. That's why I couldn't be an atheist, because it's too certain.
Yeah.
What am I? I have no idea, but I couldn't be that. It's too certain.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting is there's a writing by Karl Marx. I would need to find this now, because I used to teach theories of religion, and we would do Marxist theory, in which he says atheism, he is not an atheist because it's a result, another result of the class system in the culture it comes from. So even he couldn't do it.
Yeah. They say that in the justice system in the United States, only 3% of people arrested go to trial. Most of that is because of plea deals, and so that's a totally different subject. But in a similar way, the thing is, if all those went to trial, it would collapse the justice system. There's no way it can handle it, and so on. So that results in injustices towards Black people and so on.
Yeah.
Totally different subject. But in a similar way, the church, and we talked about that. We talked about people that start the church, run the church, and so on, need that, and they have to have these kind of followers. And we went through all that. But also, if on Sunday morning, if Betsy and John just had a breakdown because of what's going on in their life and their past traumas affecting them, we can't stop the church to do what they really need. Provide some counseling, some time with those witnesses, like you talk about, and love them, care for them. And I know people that have stopped a church service before, but it was occasional. And when I rearranged the seats one day or just took the seats out and had everybody stand up, they tolerated it. But then they said, we're going back to the old way next week, right? But just the whole load of it to provide mental health counseling and to have small groups during the main time, just to focus on those people, the one out of the 99 or whatever, the least of these, the ones that having the most trouble. If that happened, the church would shut down, but we would as a group, in my opinion, evolve. That would begin to get healed, where we could help others heal, and so on. But instead, we choose that greed, power model of the patriarchy, of getting this thing under control so that we can operate it and make it run like a business and brings in enough money to pay us. This has been helpful. A lot of the gaps that you've filled in there that paints a pretty good picture. So now, maybe in some,
can I add one thing to what you said?
yeah,
A church service, how can I put this way? A church service can be a user activity. And therefore, to interrupt it is to grab the cigarette away from the smoker before he gets it lit. A user activity.
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of interesting things going on in there, isn't there? That if you change this up, now you're putting me on a journey, not a tour.
Right. And I like that. Yeah. I know people that move in those directions or start a house church where they can do that.
Yeah.
But once it has enough success, then it almost seems like I used to be a church planter, and we'd plant churches with a totally new idea, a new method, a new way. And just before you know it, it just starts kind of morphing back into what it always was and doing things the way it always has. But, I mean, this would be a huge change, right? And the church doesn't even do small change usually. So, but I think, my son calls me somewhat of an anarchist. Yeah.
I'd wear that badge proudly.
I don't even know what that means, but I think it's okay.
I think it is too.
And
you're upsetting this apple cart.
yeah.
what's that old saying? A minister was supposed to make the uncomfortable comfortable and the comfortable uncomfortable. They're
Yeah.
actually doing that, and challenging major institutions. And there you are again. Is when something starts out, and then all of a sudden it has to become an institutionalized thing again. Now it's going along with our culture. One of the things we know in religious studies that people don't point out enough is in any culture, whether that's an African tribe, whether that's a Hindu situation or something like that, the dominant religion is the one that supports the culture's prejudices. Now, that would mean, if that's true in American culture, it's the one that supports all of the groups that make money off of addictions.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things Ann Wilson Chafe says we're fighting. In other words, one Unitarian Universalist atheist church historian named Sidney Mead, he was considered back in the day as the dean of American church historians, said, America is the marketplace of souls. And you know that if you were a part of the denomination or something like that, the measure of success is how many butts are sitting in those pews.
Hmm.
It's not the work you're doing. It's not the charity you're doing. It's how many people are coming to Sunday morning service.
Hmm.
So yes, and that's the culture we're being counterculture. That's why you're kind of sound like an anarchist. You're kind of I would say countercultural in many ways, which I consider a wonderful feature of people who change lives.
Yeah. It's been good to have you on. For the listeners, stick around. We're not done, I don't think, maybe, but so much information in that first section there. It's just so good. I want to thank you for coming on. Listeners, thanks for listening. As always, be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace. This has been episode 2 of Religious Addiction with Bob Miner. We're going to continue the discussion, and there is an episode 3 and 4 coming up soon. Make sure and find Bob at thefairnessproject.org and his book, When Religion is an Addiction. Hey, have a great day. We'll see you next episode.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.